I'm Jake, just a tired cashier at a gas station in Detroit, and I never thought finding an old photo in someone's wallet would completely blow a millionaire's mind and change both our lives forever. What I discovered that night was absolutely insane. So here's the deal. I've been working double shifts at this rundown gas station on 8 Mile for 2 years now. My mom got sick with cancer, and between her medical bills and trying to keep our apartment, I was barely scraping by. Some nights I'd work until 3 a.m., then be back at 6 a.m., because rent doesn't pay itself, you know? This particular Tuesday night, it was pouring rain, and I was dead on my feet. The fluorescent lights were flickering, making everything look even more depressing than usual. I'm talking about one of those nights where you question every life choice you've ever made. Around 11 p.m., this sleek black Tesla pulls up to pump 3. Out steps this guy in a $1,000 suit. I mean, this dude screamed money. Rolex, perfect haircut, the works. He walks in like he owns the place, which honestly, he probably could have bought our whole block without thinking twice. He grabs some energy drinks and approaches my counter. As he's paying with his Black American Express card, his wallet slips out of his hands and everything spills everywhere. Credit cards, business cards, cash, the whole 9 yards. Crap, he mutters, looking genuinely frustrated for the first time since walking in. No worries, man. Happens to everyone, I said, getting down on my knees to help him collect everything. That's when I saw it, this old, faded photograph tucked behind his driver's license. At first glance, it looked like a family photo from maybe 20 years ago, but something about it made me freeze. There was a young boy in the picture, probably around 8 years old, standing next to a woman in a nurse's uniform. They were in front of this tiny house that looked exactly like the one I grew up in. The weird part? The woman looked exactly like my mom. Same smile, same eyes, even the same little scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike as a kid. "Is this your family?" I asked, holding up the photo. The millionaire, I later learned his name was Richard Harrison, CEO of some major tech company, looked at me like I'd just grown a second head. That's my mother," he said slowly. "She died when I was 9. Why?" My heart started pounding because I was staring at a picture of my mom, but she was very much alive. Well, fighting cancer, but alive. And this stranger was claiming she was his dead mother. I'm telling you, my brain was completely fried trying to process this. Here's this millionaire holding a photo of what looked exactly like my mom, claiming she was his dead mother. It made absolutely no sense. "This is gonna sound totally nuts," I said, "but this woman looks exactly like my mom. Like, exactly." Richard stared at me for a long moment. "That's impossible. My mother, Sarah, died in a car accident 20 years ago." "My mom's name is Sarah too," I whispered, and I swear the color drained from his face. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through photos. "What's your mother's full name?" "Sarah Mitchell," I said, and his phone literally fell out of his hands. That's her maiden name," he said, his voice barely audible. "She married my father and became Sarah Harrison." This was getting freaky. I mean, what are the odds? I pulled out my own phone and showed him a recent picture of my mom from the hospital. Richard went completely silent. He just stared at the photo for what felt like forever. "This is impossible," he kept repeating. "She died. I went to her funeral. I have the death certificate." "Look, I don't know what kind of crazy coincidence this is," I said, "but my mom has been alive my whole life. She raised me as a single mom after my dad left when I was 2. That's when Richard told me something that made my world spin. He said his parents got divorced when he was 7 and his mom was supposed to have visitation rights. But after the divorce, she just disappeared. His dad told him she died in a car accident 2 years later. My father said she couldn't handle being away from me and drove off a bridge, Richard said, and I could see tears forming in his eyes. He showed me newspaper clippings, a death certificate, everything. I was freaking out. Dude, what if your dad lied to you? What if she didn't die but just started over somewhere else? The look on Richard's face was heartbreaking. Here's this powerful, wealthy guy, and he looked like a lost little kid. I need to see her, he said, if there's even a chance. She's in Detroit General, I said, room 314. But man, she's really sick. The chemo has been rough. Richard didn't even hesitate. I'm coming with you. My shift ends in an hour, but I can call my boss. No, he said, pulling out his phone. I'm calling my driver. We're going now. The drive to the hospital was the most intense 20 minutes of my life. Richard was on his phone with lawyers, demanding they pull every record about his mother's supposed death. He was also calling private investigators, telling them to dig up everything about Sarah Mitchell in Detroit. When we got to the hospital, my mom was asleep. She looked so small in that hospital bed, her head wrapped in a colorful scarf because she'd lost all her hair. Richard just stood in the doorway, frozen. That's her, he whispered. Oh my God, that's really her. Should I wake her up? I asked. Before he could answer, my mom's eyes fluttered open. She saw me first and smiled that weak but genuine smile she always gave me. Jake, honey, you didn't have to come tonight. You need your sleep. Then she noticed Richard standing there in his expensive suit, and her face went white as a sheet. Richard? She whispered, and I swear time stopped. Mom, he said, and his voice cracked completely. I'm standing there watching this reunion that should have happened 20 years ago, and I'm trying not to cry because this is the most beautiful and heartbreaking thing I've ever seen. My mom started sobbing, reaching out for him. I looked for you everywhere. Your father said you didn't want to see me. He got a restraining order, changed your schools. He told me you were dead, Richard said, moving closer to her bed. He showed me a fake death certificate. I've been in Detroit this whole time, she cried. I became Sarah Mitchell again, had Jake, but I never stopped thinking about my first baby. The truth hit us like a freight train. Richard's father had literally faked his mother's death to keep them apart. He'd hired lawyers, forged documents, and convinced an 8-year-old boy that his mom was dead rather than let her see him after the divorce. I hired private investigators for years, my mom said through her tears. But your father had money, connections. Every time I got close, you'd be moved to a different school, a different state. Richard was holding her hand now, and I could see 20 years of pain and confusion finally making sense to him. I became a millionaire partly because I thought I had nothing left to lose, he said. Dad raised me to be ruthless in business, told me family was weakness. I believed him because I thought you'd abandoned me. I never abandoned you, my mom whispered. Not a single day went by that I didn't think about you. Then Richard looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'll never forget. Jake, he said, you saved my life tonight. If you hadn't found that photo, if you hadn't been working here... Actually, I said, trying to lighten the moment, you dropped your wallet. I was just being helpful. He laughed through his tears. The best thing that ever happened to me was dropping my wallet in a gas station. That's when my mom grabbed both our hands. I have 2 sons, she said, looking between us. One I raised, and one I never stopped loving. Richard immediately asked about her treatment, her medical bills, everything. When he found out we were drowning in debt from her cancer treatment, he didn't even hesitate. That's over now, he said simply. Everything's going to be okay. And for the first time in years, I actually believed it. That was 6 months ago. My mom beat cancer. Turns out having the best doctors money can buy makes a huge difference. Richard paid for everything and even bought us a house 2 blocks from his mansion in Bloomfield Hills. I'm not working at that gas station anymore. Richard offered me a job at his company, and I'm actually pretty good at the business side of things. Turns out we both got Mom's brain for numbers. The craziest part? Richard's lawyers found evidence that his dad had been paying people to keep us hidden for 20 years. He's facing serious fraud charges now. Sometimes the most insane things happen in the most ordinary moments. Finding that photo changed 3 lives forever. And it all started because a millionaire dropped his wallet at a gas station. If you think this story is crazy as I do, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a chance encounter that changed everything? Subscribe for more insane real-life stories that'll blow your mind.